it was a really strange day already. And I was in Seattle in the Pacific time zone, so for me, December 9th is when I found out, but December 10th technically is what the date was where he was. And um, that morning, my now ex-husband and I had gone to an optometrist to like order glasses, and it was just really innocuous. But I had my phone with me, and I was like keeping track of Grant's tweets because a game was happening.
Yeah.
Um, I remember it was raining, kind of like miserable outside, but Grant stopped tweeting, which wasn't necessarily unusual because I figured, well, he's probably writing a story right now. Um, and by this stage, um, with my husband, who's an amazing person, and I know it was difficult for him to even like bring it up, but I had just like thrown up my hands after a lot of like marriage counseling and attempts uh, to a divorce. And then I got three text messages from Celine. The first one said, Grant has collapsed at the stadium. Um, and even that didn't seem strange to me because Grant overworking himself was not an unusual occurrence. Um, Grant not taking great care of himself while working a job was not unusual, even though he was a very like physically fit person. He was getting over what we thought was bronchitis, and then her follow-up message was they're giving him CPR, and then right after that, just a very short text message that said he's dead. And I just stared at that. Um, and I I remember I started screaming, um, and I had to grab a couch pillow because I didn't want my neighbors to freak out. And and then stuff just kind of moved really fast. I did something like wildly out of character for me. I made a video of myself that I so like people say live without regrets. Regrets are like a powerful teacher sometimes.
Hmm.
I I made a video and to put online, and I did, which is not something I ever do. Um, Saying that I thought Grant had been killed, and at that time, like I had maybe like 1,000 people following me on Twitter, and almost all of them were people I knew or had worked with or knew of.
Like
Um,
personally. Yeah.
yes, yeah. And and I didn't even use my own name, so, like, someone had to know who I was to, like, figure things out, but it was an immediate emotional reaction because I had literally just been talking to my brother, he just had a birthday. Um, it's not unusual for anybody with, like, a public face to get crazy emails and, like, even death threats and things, but he was telling me about some of the death threats he'd been getting that were, like, especially concerning. By this point, he had already had his whole experience wearing the
Sure.
rainbow
Yeah.
soccer shirt, and he was writing a series of things very critical of the Qatari World Cup committee, and things that were happening to migrant workers there. Um, and he had just told me about how while he was doing a podcast interview, some strange man had walked into the house he was sharing with some other journalists and was just very casually walking around, and then just walked out, and how strange he thought that was. And so I reacted the way I reacted. And meanwhile, my phone is kind of blowing up as it would in a moment like that, and mainly family. Um, and when I had like a moment, um, I I told my husband, I said, like, I've got to delete that video. I just felt kind of hanky about it. And he looked up from his phone and he said, like, it doesn't matter. It's everywhere. And that was maybe like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, it was a definite media education for me. Um, and uh, I'm glad that I didn't blame anyone directly. I'm so glad I didn't do that. But I got a lot of my own death threats, and
Mm.
that's not a comfortable place to be in. And um, I also had some very nice people reach out with higher profiles than I have to give me some suggestions and some pointers. One of which was like to put your social media in your name, but for certain things, make them private.
Yeah.
I mean, I made my Instagram private because a couple of outlets had used the video without my permission, and um, I didn't really pay attention to media much after that, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't. I think sometimes for mental health reasons, you just need a
Yeah.
break from the craziness, even if I had contributed to it. And um, but I stayed on Twitter in a very weird way. A positive byproduct of that day was the amount of support I got from people
Mhm.
I didn't know me on Twitter that actually really helped get me through stuff. And I was tweeting some things like as they were happening, like the whole process. And I think because I was just in sort of this weird kind of fugue state in my head, um, it just felt like I was reporting. Um, and
That's kind of a beautiful sentiment to grant, though.
yeah, I think, um, and like Grant knew that I had lived and worked in the Middle East, and he knew that I didn't hate Muslims or Islam or anything like that. And I knew lots of LGBTQAI plus people in the Middle East and what their lives are like. And that was the main motivator for him wearing that shirt in the first place, was not like to embarrass people, which to me was a nice byproduct, but was to recognize that like while this glorious event that we all love is happening, there are people in the host country who can't even wear a shirt like this.
Yeah.
And he was highlighting hypocrisy, which was always an important thing for Grant to highlight whenever he could. And he, even he would have said that he kind of violated a personal policy of his, like to not be the story yourself. Um, but it was a unique opportunity for him and to raise awareness. He talked to me about wearing the rainbow soccer shirt before he did it, and at the time, I kind of encouraged him not to do it
Mhm.
because I didn't want things to happen to my brother. But he had a noble reason for doing it, and I I really appreciate it.